Okay, this is Mrs. Kuiper, and I am going to be performing the investigation lab for lesson 4.5, solubility. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have three substances. We have sugar, cornstarch, and soil. Now, it says sand in our lab, but what I got is a mixture. So there are some sandy particles in there. There's some dirt. There's some bark. There's some little rocks in there. It's just kind of a mixed soil. So what I'm going to be doing is spooning them in to each jar. I am going to be stirring, and we're going to see if these substances actually dissolve in water. So I have just clear water in the jars, just tap water, okay? And we're going to stir. So when you're checking for solubility, a soluble substance is one that when we add it to a liquid, we can stir and it dissolves and you don't see it anymore. If it's insoluble, that means we can mix as long as we want and we can still see that the substance is actually not dissolving into the liquid, okay? So what we're dissolving in the substance we're putting in is called the solute, and the solvent would be, in this case, the water that's in the jar. Okay, that's what it's being dissolved into. So first of all, I'm going to take a spoonful of sugar, and I'm going to add the sugar in, and I'm going to start stirring. Now, if we added temperature, this process would go faster because soluble substances will dissolve often faster with heat. That's because heat actually creates energy and it makes the particles, the matter, the atoms speed up. They move faster and that dissolves things much faster. Okay, so heat will actually affect how much of a substance can dissolve into a liquid, and in some cases, whether it completely dissolves or not. Okay, so I think most of that is dissolved, and it looks like we have a clear liquid with a few granules. If I kept stirring, those few granules still swirling around would dissolve as well, okay? If this was hot water, the sugar would have dissolved a lot faster. So is the sugar soluble? And the answer is yes, sugar is soluble. So now I'm going to use cornstarch. Cornstarch is what traditionally is used to thicken things. And so I'm going to drop a spoonful in here and I'm going to start to stir. Now, cornstarch is one of those things where eventually cornstarch would look like it had dissolved, but it takes a lot longer to stir it in, partially because it's a powder. And we'll see if we have any of the cornstarch left when we do our filtration. So if it's a solution, that means when I filter, when I put the solution through a filter, all of the particles that are in that water will actually go through the filter and into the bowl. Okay, so I won't be able to filter them out with a filter. That means that it's a solution. If I put the mixture through a filter and I have things left, either things left at the bottom of the jar or things left in the filter, then I know that it is a mixture and not a solution. In solution, the particles completely dissolve, okay? So you can see that this is kind of murky, which means that, but it has a layer of clear on the top too. So I think if I continued mixing that, I might be able to get it all to dissolve, but it's more insoluble at this point than I would say soluble. Now, what I know about cornstarch is if I were to heat that up, cornstarch would all of a sudden disappear and you wouldn't be able to actually see it. It would be a clear liquid. However, the liquid would be changed. It would be thicker. So the cornstarch would actually change this water into like almost a syrup or gravy consistency, okay? And so I know that it can be It can look soluble, but in this state, I would call it insoluble or maybe somewhat soluble because some of it has dissolved, but not all of it from what I can see. All right. And then here is my last one. This is my soil sand bark mixture here. And I'm going to stir that up as much as I can here. I'm going to get some of it off the sides. And let that swirl around a little bit more. I'm going to stir it more. And I'm just going to kind of let that settle. And you can see right away that the dirt and the sand and the little white pieces that are vermicite, they're really lightweight things that are added to soil to aerate it a little bit. Okay, you can see that we've got things settling down to the bottom of the jar and we've got things floating on the top. But the dirt and soil and sand and particulates have not dissolved in the water. They're still there. So is sand soluble? No, because it did not dissolve. Now, the next test we're going to perform, if you have a soluble substance, you should be able to filter it, and everything should go through the funnel into the bowl below. Okay, so how I'm going to make a filter, usually you could take a piece of paper towel and you could fold it in triangles, but actually I have a funnel. And so I'm just going to stick this almost like a coffee filter in here. Okay, so I'm just going to push it into the funnel and I'm going to pour my solution through there. So if the sugar truly is dissolved in the water, then everything in this jar should go right through into the bowl and I should have nothing left on my filter. Okay, there it goes. It may take it a minute as it goes through the paper towel. Okay, and I have a clear liquid on the top, and it's a completely clear liquid that's going through the bottom. And you can see there's nothing left on the filter. There's no discoloration. All of the water is going through and nothing is left on my filter. Nothing's left on it. Okay, so the sugar in the water was definitely dissolved. And so sugar water, we made a solution because the substance we put in there completely dissolved. So that would be considered a solution. If it's a mixture, not everything dissolves. Okay, so now I'm going to do the cornstarch in water. Okay, so as that's filtering, look at my glass. Look at the sludge. So it did not completely dissolve. Okay, it did not completely dissolve. And the water that I have going through, look, it's almost stopping. Okay, because there's so much cornstarch still left in that water that it's clogging the bottom of the paper towel. So there's going to be some cornstarch left on the paper towel, but most of the water is going through. I could give this a gentle squeeze and it would go through a little faster. Normally I wouldn't do this, but I'm trying to speed this up, okay? So I can see. So let's see what's left on that filter. So I don't know how well you can see this, but there's kind of a filmy sludge left on the bottom. It's white. So the cornstarch did not completely dissolve. Some of it dissolved, but not all of it dissolved, right? So I would say the cornstarch was somewhat soluble, but not completely soluble. So I'm going to do another filter here in my funnel. And this time I'm going to do the soil and sand. notice what's coming through is clear. I don't see any sand or soil in there. But my filter is catching the soil and the sand particles. So if you filter out a substance, or you filter a mixture, okay, and you get stuff left on the filter, that means it was not a solution, it was a mixture, okay? So the soil didn't actually dissolve in the water, and the sand didn't dissolve in the water, it just mixed with it. So we were able to filter it out. And this is one way that you can get non-solvents, okay, things that do not, substances that don't dissolve in the water. This is one way you can separate them out from the things that do dissolve in the water, is you can use a filter. And I just used a paper towel and a funnel, okay, and it got all the soil out of there. Okay, so the next part of this experiment that you're going to need to do is we need you to fill out, fill out in our Google Classroom, and I apologize, that just bumped me out of there. Okay, let me see, where am I at? Oh, it's not letting me go here, so. Oh, screen sharing. Okay, here we go. So we are on the screen share. So in our Google Classroom, we're going to go to classwork, and here is the lab investigation for lesson 4.5, solubility in water. Okay, watch the video or watch Mrs. Kuiper perform the investigation. Then fill out the lab slides. Make sure to answer all the questions. So you can watch this video. They're going to do salt and sugar and sand, and I did sugar and cornstarch and actually a sand soil. Okay, so the hypothesis, what did you think originally was going to dissolve or not dissolve in the water? Did you think sugar would dissolve? Did you think cornstarch would dissolve? Did you think sand would completely dissolve? So you're going to put your hypothesis there, and then you're going to click here and fill out this chart. So cornstarch and water, any solute on the filter? And the answer was yes. Solute would be the substance. Was there any substance left over on the filter? Yes. Any solute substance you see in the water for the cornstarch? Yes, there was still some in the water, okay? So here it's insoluble when a substance will not dissolve into another, okay? So you could say insoluble, or you could say partially soluble, okay? Somewhat soluble. Sugar in water, any solute left on the filter? No. Any solute you see in the water? No. Okay, so that means it was soluble. Sugar was soluble when a substance dissolves into another. The sand or soil and water. Any solute on the filter? Yes. Any solute you see in the water? Yes. So that means that the sand and water or soil and water was insoluble, when a substance will not dissolve into another. And so when a substance does not dissolve, we call that a mixture, not a solution. If a substance dissolves into another, then that would be considered a soluble substance, and we would have made a solution, okay? Salt and water. Salt and water end up being soluble as well if you watched the other video. And so the last thing you're going to do is answer these questions. Was the cornstarch soluble, somewhat soluble, or insoluble? What did you think? And what evidence did you observe? What did you observe on the filter, or what did you observe in the water? Was the sugar soluble, somewhat soluble, or insoluble? What evidence did you observe to support your answer? What was on the filter when we filtered the sugar or water? What was in the glass? Okay, did you see any sugar? Okay, salt, if you're gonna do the same thing with the salt, and in this case, we used my video, which was the sand-soil combination. Was the sand or soil soluble, somewhat soluble, or insoluble? What evidence did you observe to support your answer? So you're gonna write your answer here, and did you see something on the filter? Did you see particulates still in the water? Okay, and that is filling out the lab, and then you would just turn that into our Google Classroom. And so I'm going to stop my share, And I'm going to come back here. Now it's time for me to clean up, and it's time for you to fill out the solubility in water lab. And I will be posting this in our Google Classroom, and I'll see you later.